Now, for the sake of you who missed yesterday with Jimmy DeYoung, I want to mention now that you can log on to crossroads.ca and you can see the full interview on the internet, on YouTube or whatever your choice is, because when you hear today's interview, you're definitely going to want to go back to yesterday's interview and you'll want to be tuned for tomorrow's interview. But Jimmy DeYoung is well known to many of you because of his long 18 years with Day of Discovery, with the journeys that he and Mark DeHaan made through Israel and the wonderful programs they did there. And Jimmy, welcome back. Good to have you for day number 2. I want to pick up right where we left off. We're talking about this remarkable dynamic confusion that the Middle East appears to be right now. Something happened, again, we're talking just after the Libya events have occurred. Today, as we speak, Haaretz, which is one of the newspapers, it's more left-leaning newspaper, but nevertheless one of the key newspapers in Israel, announced that the spokesman for the rebels in Libya had called on Israel for help. And I mean, I'm reading this and I'm thinking, what?
Yes.
What? And the reporter who was interviewing this guy by phone said, are you prepared to recognize Israel? And he said, well, we'll talk about that later. The question is, are you prepared to recognize us?
Yeah.
But the fact is that here you have the emerging leadership of Libya reaching out to Israel. And whoever would have imagined that such a conversation would take place?
I know it. And I'm wondering if it's subterfuge. Now, having spent some time with the leaders in writing our book there, guys like Moshe Aarons, the defense minister for 3 times in a row, Reuven Rivlin, who is the speaker of the Knesset, and the Prime Minister Netanyahu, I'm suggesting that they're probably going to want to know, who are these rebels? Yeah. What is their background? Where are they coming from? Libya in the past has been ruled for 42 years by Gaddafi. He overthrew the government when he came to power, and he's been a terrible madman in killing his people and living off the riches of the land and not taking care of his people. But again, like Hosni Mubarak, like Bashar Assad in Syria, Colonel Gaddafi in Libya really never was ready to attack Israel, at least in the last, say, 30 years or so. And so to some extent, they have been moderate as it relates to the Israeli situation. Now with this Arab Spring, i.e. evolving into the Arab Summer, now all of these uprisings in these different countries, you've got Egypt, and Hosni Mubarak, who was the protector of Israel, is gone. Now the element coming in of the Muslim Brotherhood. You've got Syria, probably Bashar Assad's going to be gone not too far down the line. Israeli intelligence making a statement that his life as leader of the country will be short-lived. Gaddafi on his way out, if they can even find where he is, if he's not killed himself already. All of these elements, though, that have been backing all these rebellions. Where are they coming from? Who are they? We need to know some information behind them. The European Union and NATO gets behind these rebels in Libya. Who are they? The United States jumps in. Who are they? We need to know that, and we need to know who's going to corral all of these munitions and weapons and chemicals that they have that could be used to make dirty nuclear bombs. And if they get into the hands of the terrorists, they're going to come immediately. I mean, the radical element wants to rid the Middle East of Israel, so they're going to come there. And so it's ironic that the Libyan spokesperson would call and say, hey, we need Israel. Are they going to come along and join us and recognize us as the new leaders of the country?
Do you suppose some of the moderation of these former leaders like Mubarak and Gaddafi, and I agree with you, Assad's time is numbered, part of their moderation was rooted in the fact that they feared Israel's retaliatory capacity vis-a-vis nuclear arms?
I'm absolutely convinced that's the case. I mean, Israel has made the statement, we will not be the ones who strike first, but you strike us, and but they've never even admitted. They've never really admitted that they have a nuclear capability, which is smart. I mean, you got the big stick, you just hide it until you need it. Yeah. And that's exactly what they've done, and that's part of it. But in addition to that, Gaddafi He was living the life of luxury. Why would he want to go start a war with Israel? His millions and billions of dollars taking care of he and his family. Hosni Mubarak, he was getting ready to put his son as the leadership of the country to continue his legacy on into the future.
He had scores of billions of dollars.
Absolutely. And then you look at Bashar Assad, his daddy, Hafez al-Assad, ruled the country for 42 years, handed it to his son. They never had an election. And, well, they had an election, but Bashar Assad was the only one running. So he got 99% of the vote.
Now, here's a question that is controversial, and I haven't really heard anyone ask it on all of the newscasts, but I'm going to ask it of you.
Thank you.
Throw it to you. We already see what's happening in Egypt. We watched with amazement during the events of Tahrir Square and the fall of Mubarak and the great joy of a liberated nation. They still haven't got themselves together several months in. They seem to be confused by the democratic process and what democracy really means. You look at Libya, total confusion. Nobody knows if there's going to be any real structure that emerges out of there. It could be tribal gang warfare for years to come.
Most likely it will be.
Yeah. You look at Syria again, as things continue to devolve there. You know, we look at these places with the naive Western lens of, you know, all they need is democracy. The president talks about that. President Bush talked about it. President Obama talks about it. My question to you is this: can democracy even work among millions of people who seem to be motivated only by a strong man?
I want to tell you, Jim, you have asked, in my opinion, the key question, and I do not know why these talking faces don't ask that question. Democracy is simply mob rule. Democracy is one more than 50% ruling the country. Let me just give a perfect example. The United States, under George Bush, the United States pushed the Palestinians to have a democratic election. When they did so, Hamas won the election. And Hamas, of the two factions of the body politic, Hamas and Fatah, Hamas won the election, and they are the radical Islamists who want a worldwide caliphate, a worldwide kingdom set up in the city of Jerusalem, and their leader ruling from that particular spot. And so democracy is not the answer. And here's a people that have come up. I remember in the beginning, you know, see, I was there in '91 in Jerusalem. I was there for 39 Scud attacks. I was watching what George I did, George Bush I, when he took out the situation there in Iraq and settled that down for a while. But I was also watching as they then started talking about implementing democracy there, democracy here, democracy throughout the Islamic world. Saudi Arabia, King Abdullah came to the power to be, and he said, look, we don't want democracy. We're going to be the cutting edge to attack any democratic state. Islam is not a democracy. And that's how they've operated. I mean, you know, you're right. Leaders in the West don't understand. This is what an Islamic leader listens to. Yeah. And Mubarak, Gaddafi, Assad, Saddam Hussein, they ruled the country with this. And then we come along and listen, I want to tell you there was less confusion, and I'm not standing up for Saddam Hussein, but there was less confusion and less killing except for what he ordered to have happen there, and the peoples were getting together easier in Iraq before they took him out. I mean, it's mass confusion today. Right now, they're trying to make a decision, and Maliki, who's the prime minister, he's weak as anything. He's afraid to even stand up and say, look, we need the United States troops to stay here because we really are not capable of stabilizing this war-torn country we want to build. And underneath him is another Shiite cleric, a radical guy named Muqtada Sadr. part of the city of Baghdad is named Sadr after his father. And he's an Iranian. He's been learning in Iran for a number of years, come back in. He has the Mahdi militia, the Messiah's militia. And they are major players. And in fact, they threatened the United States and said, look, you don't get these troops out of here by the end of 2011, we're going to start killing them one by one.
You know,
that's the situation.
Yeah, you know, the irony of that relationship, and again, the average viewer, the average North American maybe is not aware of the subtleties of the almost the internecine warfare between various factions in the Arab world. But for a long period of time, Hussein, who was Sunni, was basically providing a resistance to Iran who were Shia, trying to get to Israel to drive Israel into the sea. In the conflict that Iraq and Iran had, Israel was being protected.
Yes.
Which is a bit of an irony.
It is.
I also remember one day dropping in on the Israel Bible Society. It was led at that time by a man that had come to know the Lord through our ministry there in Jerusalem, an Israeli. And his whole office was lined with, from floor to ceiling, with boxes of Arab New Testaments. And I said, Daron, what's with the, is this a special order for the West Bank? He says, no, Jim, it's for Iraq. I said, what, Iraq? Yes, he says, Saddam Hussein, he likes Christians, they're moderate, he wants more Bibles. So here's the Israel Bible Society sending tens of thousands of Bibles into Iraq at the request of Saddam Hussein. I mean, there's so many subtleties beneath the surface, and what we see in newspapers is only just the surface.
And by the way, let me just interrupt for a moment. Those Christians that are in Iraq now are under attack by the radical Islamic element. Get Saddam out of the way, who were protecting him early on, like you've just illustrated, and now they're under attack, and all across the Middle East, Islamic fatwas have been put out to destroy the Christian community, tear down their churches, attack and kill the people. That's happened in Egypt, it's happening in Iraq, etc., etc.